is just kind of a prelude to the talk that I have about China, and it involves a little sign that I saw in an apartment in China. But the question that I start off with is, how big is your God? One of the things that I learned about China when I was there, if you had to describe China in one word, it would be big. Everything is big. I saw this in an apartment of a Christian in China, in English, and a lot of times their English little sayings don't make any sense because they don't translate well. But I saw this and I had to take a picture of it. Don't tell God that you have a big problem. Tell your problem that you have a big God. Is your God big enough to solve all your problems? Well, the gospel in China, it's been going on for a long time. A lot of people have been there. A lot of evangelists have been there. A lot of churches of Christ have sent missionaries there for a lot of years. The man that I went over there with, Darrell Dobbins, has been going there for 15 years. I had the opportunity of going with him twice for a month at a time, a little over 3 weeks. 4 weeks the first time and a little over 3 weeks the second time. 2015 and 2017, two quite different trips. But to put a face on the gospel in China, this is just one of the most amazing faces. This is after a baptism. This girl was converted first, then her mother, and then her father, and then her uncle. And the smiles just say it all. She was so happy that her family now were Christians instead of, I don't know how you would describe it. There's a lot of different religions in China. Buddhism only makes up about 10%. Ancestor worship is probably the largest. It is a nation that has gone back, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 years. But China's still now just trying to find itself. It's real easy to see that. The picture on the left was what China looked like for about 5,000 years. In 1901, they went from being an imperial dynasty for the last 5,000 years to being something new. They tried being a republic. They tried being a dictatorship. I think they're well on their way to being one of the biggest capitalist nations in the world now. But this picture on the right now, that's where the first shot of the revolution was fired. The nationalists had been gaining some strength in China and trying to overthrow the imperialists. And an explosion went off at this place, and the nationalists thought, well, we're going to get blamed for it, so we might as well start the revolution. The shot was fired not by any one of them, but just kind of accidentally went off, and that's where it started, and we stayed in the hotel right across the street from this. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. It's a long, long flight. 14 and a half hours if you're lucky. The first flight in 2015 took me from Nashville to Chicago to Shanghai. For 10 of those hours, either way you fly, whether it's over the ocean or over the Arctic, you're flying over water for the bulk of the trip. It's white. That's the route we took the first time. The second time we took the blue route, and it ended up taking about 26 and a half hours because of things getting rerouted and missing planes and missing connections. So this is what it looks like out the plane window when you fly over the Arctic. About 10 hours of ice and snow that you look at. Best way to fly, take a Benadryl when you get on the plane or a Lunesta. Go put your mask on, go to sleep for about 8 or 9 or 10 hours if you can. And then you've only got about a 4-hour flight and you're good and rested when you get there. Coming back is when I had the jet lag. Some people get the jet lag going over there. Some get it coming back. It took me about 2.5 weeks to recover from the jet lag coming back. This is our arrival in Shanghai. The Darrell Dobbins is on the, Lindsay would be on the right there, yeah. He's on the right, our translator and the guide and what I call a facilitator. We have a whole team of Chinese people over there now, or Darrell does, has built this network of Christians that have different functions. One of the main things that you're going to have is a translator, just to eat, because none of the menus are in English. A lot of the signs are in English, but you will get lost if you read the English that they have. The other is guide, and she was responsible for booking tickets and trains and airplanes and buses and getting us to our locations, because all of the street signs, again, are going to be in Chinese. And then myself as kind of the second teacher. Darrell and I would both be teaching, and then our network of Chinese friends would be doing their various things, and I'll explain that as we go. This is the first city that after we left Shanghai. Shanghai has 2 airports. One is Pudong, which is the international airport that all the international flights come into. Then you have to take about a 4.5-hour drive to the other airport on the other side of town. I say 8.5 million people. You have to take a taxi or whatever to the other airport so that you can fly within China. They don't put the 2 of them next to each other, and none of the local flights go out of Pudong to the other places. So that's your first experience, is cramming into that little tiny car with a month's worth of luggage for 3 people, stuff hanging out the back, because these cars we'll see some, well, you can see a few of them here. A Toyota is considered a Cadillac there, because that's about as big as the cars ever get. But one of the things that you see when you first come to Guangzhou is everything's big, huge. Signs, billboards, people. But there's the cars. There's a lot of the taxis. This is some of the different modes of transportation. So we flew in there in an airplane. Well, we went to a small little farm outside of Guilin, where they used to have a congregation that met there for about, they had a congregation that met here. This is in the lower right picture. They had a congregation that met here for about 7 years, but they're out in the country. They're only about 25 miles from a city of 4.5 million, and you're out here in this beautiful countryside. And when they fixed this dinner, they just went out in the yard, killed the chickens and a couple of ducks, pulled up some weeds from alongside the pathways there that is their garden, put them in the pot, and we served dinner right out there in the middle of that courtyard. But they're singing at their congregation that met here in this barn. When he showed us this barn, a lot of pictures I don't have that I'm not able to show you, because if we got caught, we don't want the authorities seeing a lot of the pictures. We try to, when we baptize people, to get their hair dry before they start taking pictures of each other and send them on WeChat, which is China's version of Facebook. They're all excited about it, but it's the most dangerous thing because they monitor all the computer traffic. And so we try not to take any pictures of anything that shows Westerners converting Chinese people into Christians. Completely illegal, quickest way to get yourself kicked out of the country. So we went to this little farm, and their congregation no longer meets there because their singing got so loud that some of the other people down in the valley were complaining about it. And the authorities came and found about 75 people in this barn that had been meeting there for the last 7 years. They broke them up. Some of the leaders they took I guess for lack of a better word, they call it re-education. They send them different places in the northern part of China, and they re-educate them so that they will not be trying to spread Christianity anymore. Unfortunately, a lot of them never returned. But a lot of this group was dispersed. And so now they meet in the second story of a building in downtown Wheeling that they found. It's built completely out of concrete. We got the opportunity to go visit this congregation. And when you first come into the building, you don't hear a sound. Everything's concrete, everything's unfinished. There's no real acoustics to it at all. But we went up the elevator and onto the second floor, and when they opened the doors, the music just poured out of these doors. You could stand at the door and not hear anything on the other side of that. They found a nearly soundproof room in the middle of a town of 4.5 million, or city of 4.5 million people. So now they can sing as loud as they want, and nobody can hear them. They've got this congregation that inside of a soundproof room. One of the things that amazed me about the congregation was they have a Jewish ram's horn that they used to use kind of like maybe in the temple worship. But they'll get the blowing on that thing to get everybody's attention because everybody's pretty much really into the singing. They'll get there sometimes at 7:30 in the morning. One gentleman rides all the way from where we were here, 25 miles, he rides his bicycle into town. When we hold a meeting there for 3 days, they come every single morning at 7:30. We get there at about 8 o'clock. They've already started singing. They will stay there until 5 o'clock when we leave. We will break one time for lunch. Some of them will just sleep there. Some of them will eat there. Some of them will scatter out into the city and eat. But they all come back there and they listen to us teach and preach for about 10 solid hours. For 3 days. He would ride his bike 25 miles in, 25 miles home, 25 miles in. There's not that dedication in this country. Nowhere. It's just amazing. Another form of transportation we used, getting to the top of the Wangshan Mountains, that's a tramway, tram that they built. You can't see it in this picture. If I had do I have a laser pointer on this? Yes. Down here, there's this little wooden walkway that's kind of strapped to the side of the rocks. The Wangshan Mountains are a type of Grand Canyon to them. A lot of tourists go there. You'll see later on pictures that they have. And so some of the steps that are carved in these mountains are 1,500 years old, they say. And so over the years, they've improved and improved and improved. But we took the tram to the top of the mountain. You can walk to the top of the mountain. It takes 4.5 hours. Or it's 12 minutes, 12 and a half minutes by this tram. So we took the tram. and up and down, and then walked for about 8 hours around the top of the mountains. Another form of transportation, and one of the neatest things about their buses, the top picture here is a bus. They have curtains, and every one has a personal air conditioner right there. The driver's down here, and their buses far exceed our buses in the way that they're designed. But then they have the swinging bridge. The swinging bridge. This is Durrell here. We would walk across this bridge, and we were coming back, and there was a scooter coming across, and we noticed as the scooter came across, we got off to the side, we noticed as the scooter came across, all of the boards started rattling. None of those boards were tied down. Those boards were just laid there on this swinging bridge. We got off of there pretty quick. The other end, you can't see it in this picture, but we were getting on a plane at Wheeling Airport, and right behind that plane is another plane with an English title on it. The name of the airline is Now Anyone Can Fly. I'm glad we weren't on that plane. I'm not sure who was the pilot, but anything that says now anybody can fly on the side of their plane, I don't really want to get into. And then there's the transportation on their fast trains. They are so far ahead of us in transportation, it's amazing. We have, I don't know how many tens of thousands of miles of highway in this country that's been built since 1957. I think our interstate system started in about the late 50s. They will surpass us by the number of miles of paved highway by 2020 at the rate that they're building their highways. Their highways are wide, they're made out of asphalt, they're just like ours, they're in great shape, better than most of ours. Their trains, this is a third level of the train station that I'm standing on taking this picture. That's where you get your ticket. Down on the first level is where you get your baggage and go. The second goes out here to about 10 or 15 different tracks. You get on one of these trains, and as they're leaving, you can see that I converted it and put the sign on it. As they're leaving the train, as they're leaving the station, they're already doing 120 miles an hour. These trains used to go 400. They've made them go slower now because they've had too many really, really bad wrecks. One, and there was, I got a pic, I didn't put it on here, but I took a picture of it as we went by. One wreck that they had was about 2 weeks before we had got there, and they didn't even recover any of the bodies. They just dug a trench, pushed the train off into the trench, and covered it over. And that's where 200 and some odd people died in a train wreck. Fortunately, that didn't happen to us, but we got on some trains that did about 300 miles per hour. It was pretty amazing because you can get up and walk around and you don't even feel like you're moving and you're going 300 miles an hour. You look out the window and power poles are going by like picket fences. All they have to do to make them run in reverse is they step on the seat and they spin the seat around, and then the train goes back the other direction. They never have to turn the train around. One place that we went, they didn't bother to turn the seats around. For 45 minutes, we went 200 miles an hour backwards, sitting in our seat. That was kind of a weird experience. Okay, when we got there, we would usually check into one of the major hotels downtown. So that would be a central point where the different congregations would send people to our hotel room for lessons. We would usually either get 2 rooms or a 2-room suite, one room that had separate rooms. We like to break the classes up into non-believers that have not heard the gospel yet, and then the Christians that are coming there that have heard the gospel and just need more lessons given to them. So that's why we always would try to have two teachers. One of us would take the new believers, or either new believers or non-believers, and the other would take the experienced Christians that needed more training and stuff. And we would pack them into this room because we try to keep the crowds of less than 25. Anything over 25, after Tiananmen Square, the Chinese government doesn't like groups getting together of larger than 25. They start seeing things on cameras. There's cameras everywhere, and even this television that was in this hotel room, and you can see it there. That television's got a camera on it, just like a computer does. But there are authorities at the other end of that can see what's going on in that room and hear what's going on in that room. So a lot of the televisions we'll either just unplug them when we come in, or we'll put a Band-Aid over the top of the camera or something like that, and then we're usually gone before they figure that out, that one's been tampered with.
What would the authority do if they come in or y'all teach God?
In 2015, when I was there, I was there in April of 2015. 2 months later, when Darrell went back, they got arrested. Everybody in the room, they take them to the police station. They separate the Americans out from the Chinese. They interrogated the Americans all night, through the night, took their phones, took their laptops, took all of their information, took their visas, put them on a plane the next day back to America. They don't want to mess with us too much, but it's illegal for Westerners to teach Chinese people the gospel. It's also, and they don't even mind that as much as they do baptizing. The state church is the only church that's authorized to baptize in China, and so they especially don't want anybody outside of the state church baptizing everybody. That's the main reason we go over there, is to make Christians, and baptize them into Christ, and send them on their way to becoming Christians, full mature Christians. Whereas the state church wants to take years of study before they allow them to be baptized.
What's the state church?
The state church is a I guess you could compare it kind of to the Church of England back in the 1500s, 1600s. Or even the Roman Catholic, which was the state church there. It's a church that's approved by the government to teach the Bible, but they have to teach what the state wants them to teach. They have a religious authority that says, okay, here's what you can say and what you can't say. They go through the Bible and say, you have to leave this part out. Yeah, you can talk about this, but you can't talk about that. So really, it's
Bible centered.
Yeah, it's a non-church, I guess. I don't know a good name for it, but it's not a religion that it's where they go to meet. Most of the state churches, we were invited to one state church. We were allowed to get up and say hi, and we're glad that we could be here, but we weren't allowed to preach. But we wanted to make a showing there because after we left the state church, our hotel room just got inundated with students wanting to hear. Because you can tell people what they want to hear, or you can tell people what you want them to hear. But there is individuals that are starved to hear the truth. They know they're not hearing the truth, and they want to hear the truth. And the Chinese psyche is a little bit strange. We have a natural distrust of foreigners in America, it seems to me, that foreigners come here and they bring different doctrines or different ideas or different things with them. We have a natural kind of distrust of them until after they've been here for a while. Chinese have a natural distrust of each other. A Westerner goes there and tells them, you need to be baptized in order to be saved. They will believe that instantaneously. A Chinese person tells them, you need to be baptized to be saved. They're thinking in their head, what does he want from me? The Cultural Revolution of 1966 changed everything. Kids turned their parents in, parents turned their kids in. It was a horrible, horrible time. 17 million people disappeared from the face of China during the Cultural Revolution from 1966 until about 1972. So Chinese are just naturally afraid of their own people. We need to get about another generation away from it, but they still have that generation where when they naturally distrust each other. So the groups that we teach, and I'll show you some facilitators, what we call connectors here. There are people that are in China that teach English. English is the number one thing that everybody wants to learn in China because that's the language of business. And so there's teachers that have gone over there to teach English, and they use the Bible as a text. And then they find students that are interested in learning what the Bible has to say, and they bring them to us at the hotel rooms. And rather than us going into congregations where we're really not allowed, we have connectors over there that connect with these people that are teaching English, or they're in universities. They're the most important people that we have there. And Christians that recognize and bring people in, then only the groups that come in there, everybody in that group will know each other. They either go to the state church together and they have their own little group off to the side, or they meet somewhere else, but they know each other and they trust each other. And so those are the ones that will come. If somebody comes into the hotel room that nobody in the room knows, everything gets real quiet. And one of the translators will take that person outside and start asking them questions. Who do you know here? What are you doing here? How did you hear about this? Because the state will send spies in, and then they'll just take notes and turn everybody in later.
Brother Ron.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the state church an arm of the government?
State church is, no, it's controlled by the government, but it's not, well, I guess you could say it was an arm of the government. It's not. One of the preachers in Hefei that we went to the state church there, and we were always welcome at his congregation, at his building. He said, they don't always approve everything that I preach from the pulpit. But yeah, we are a state-approved church, and we have to do certain things the way that the state wants them done. But not everything that I say from this pulpit has gone through Beijing. And he risked his life a lot of times by preaching some of the things that he did. I think they got to him afterwards. We can't go back to Hefei. Hefei is one of those cities that we have been followed and harassed and nobody's been arrested as far as Americans go, but they've taken Chinese people that we've met with and they've drained their brain as well as their laptops and their cell phones, and gotten everybody's phone numbers and connections and stuff like that. So Hefei is a town of about 5 or 6 million people that we have a lot of friends and a lot of Christians there, but we usually meet just on the outskirts. And I'll show you one place we met in the mountains on the outskirts of Hefei, and they all got on the train and came down and met us up on the mountains, and where the state people don't want to follow you because all you have to do is walk everywhere. And they're not, they do the work for the state, but they're not going to go out of their way. This gives you kind of an idea of where China has come from since the early 1900s. This housing right here is some of the old communist housing, about 4 stories high, and they grow their gardens on the roof. And then on Tuesday or Wednesday, all of these balconies will have a laundry hanging from them because they just air dry everything. This is a clear day in Guangzhou. Most of the time you can't see these buildings back here because of the air pollution. But most of these apartment buildings that they're building now are 60 plus stories tall. They're all really finely finished on the outside, and they're just bare concrete on the inside. If you buy an apartment in one of them, the average apartment is about 400 to 500 square feet, costs about $175,000 US. They have a horrible crisis, real estate crisis. A lot of these buildings are sitting empty because nobody can afford to live in. But they've done that throughout the whole country. We saw, and I don't know if I have pictures here, but we saw entire cities that had been built. Nobody lived in them yet. The streets were there, the street lights were there, all the infrastructure was there, the apartment complexes were there, the business complexes were there. You go by at night and the thing was completely black because none of the electricity had been hooked up yet. When an American business decides that they want to move their manufacturing facility over there, they say, here you go, we've got a place for you right here. We'll have workers for you there by the end of the week. They go into these cities and they say, you're moving, you're moving, you're moving, you're moving. This is where you're going to work, this is where you're going to live. And that city becomes full-blown overnight. The small businesses will start to move in there, the little restaurants and the little shops will eventually move in there to help service the workers. But they tell you where you're going to live, who you're going to work for, and that manufacturing facility sets up there. They go from 0 to 5,000 employees in one day. And that's part of the uniqueness of a communist country, where they can tell you where you're going to live and what you're going to do, even though they're going to pay you and you're going to have some amount of freedom with the money that you have. It's a strange way of life. New York City is the largest city we have, 7 million people. The United States has 10 cities that have more than 1 million people. China has 165 cities with more than 1 million. It's about the size of the United States as far as geographical area. It's 4.5 times the population. I think in the 2017 census, we had 3.2 million people, 325 million people living in the United States. They had 1.38 billion in China. Any place they could find to grow food, they grow food. Rooftop balconies as an example. I had pictures of little breaks in the sidewalk where a brick had fallen out and there was dirt underneath it, and there was vegetables growing in that little 1 foot by 6 inch square of dirt. Somebody had planted a vegetable plant and probably watching it from the sidewalk. I don't know how they respect each other's gardens and stuff like that, but anywhere they can grow food, they grow food. I always grew up here in China, had no food. I saw more food, I ate at more restaurants, I saw more food and fruit and everything than any place in my life. They have got food flowing all over. they don't lack for food, but they sure have a lot of people. Okay, here's a couple of the connectors. The lady on the left is a university professor named Jane. All of these people have Chinese names that you can't pronounce, so they all want to have English names. So usually after they're baptized, their name gets changed, they get an English name. Joy is in the center, and she is a businesswoman that sells, I believe she sells front doors. They have real elaborate, none of these apartments, those 60-story apartments, none of those apartments come with a front door. So she sells these front doors to people that move into the apartments and makes a really good living there. Also has a lot of contacts that way. They bring students into the hotel rooms. And this is a typical, this is the very first class that I was in attendance of there in Guangzhou. And they bring water, they bring fruit, they bring stuff to eat and drink, and they just pile it all over, and everybody sits around, and then somebody starts a lesson, and then at the end of the lesson, whoever is ready to respond to the gospel, we have in every town that we go to, and every town except for maybe a couple that I was in, I've been in, I think, 45 different cities in China. Somebody in the town has a 3-foot by 3-foot kiddie pool. It's about 3 foot in diameter, and you blow up the sides and put 5 little rods in it and fill this thing, take it in the shower in the bathroom and fill it full of water. 99% of the Chinese population can get fully immersed in that little pool.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of really intriguing to see. They could put me in there. I baptized a 6-foot tall Chinese man in that pool and got him completely under. You get on your knees, then they're so flexible, they go down, they come back up. We disassemble the pool, deflate it, dry it all out, put it back in the box. It goes down the elevator and goes to somebody's house there for the next time that we're in town. We'll have a baptismal pool everywhere we go. But these connectors are really the key to these classes, because they bring these people in. These are some of the different rooms that we were in. We just sit around on the beds. It's very informal. But in hotels, you have to be careful that you don't get a smudge on the sheets, because the hotel will charge you $4 or $5 for a sheet if you get it dirty. They will launder them, but if you get a sheet dirty, a little bit of chocolate on it, a little bit of raspberry or strawberry stain, your bill goes up when you leave. These three were hotel rooms. This was a compound that we went to in a place called Waibei. They would come and pick us up in the morning at our hotel and would leave town. And as we left town, Darrell and I would have to get on the floor and they'd cover us up with blankets. And then they drove down all these little country roads until they got to this. One of the Christians there had bought this house and turned it into a compound that leaders could meet in. So it had a complete wall all the way around it. The gate in the wall, they would drive the vehicle through, leave the covers over the top of us, and we would get out of the van and go up these stairs and into this place. They kept the curtains closed, and we would have to stay there the entire day until we were ready to go back to our hotel. They would do the same process over. Westerners were not allowed to be in this part of China, and so just a white face and round eyes was going to draw attention. The leaders that we met with this, and we taught, the time that I was there, we taught about 35 of them, had come from as much as 600 miles away to stay there for 4 days. Now, I was lucky. This compound had running water and inside toilets, and they cooked there and fed us our meals there. The compound that they had gone to back in the early 2000s, up until this gentleman had bought this, had a hole in one corner of the compound for the latrine, had an outside shower, and had bunks in there that were made out of wood with a little bit of board slats across them to sleep on. And they stayed in there for 4 or 5 days and they taught there. But the harshest of conditions, these people don't even, it doesn't even cross their mind to endure the kind of hardships that they go through. During the breaks on that one, they all want to make sure you're healthy. So they're going to get right up in your face and smell your breath to see if you're healthy. If you're not, they're going to start telling you what you need to be eating. They're going to do muscle massages on you because you look like you're walking a little crooked. They're just going to give you the royal treatment while you're there to make sure that you're going to be healthy enough to come back and preach to them the next time that you're in China. And it's all from the heart. It's real uncomfortable. I'm out of my comfort zone for 4 entire weeks. My jaw is on the ground because this country is so big. The people are so incredibly nice, the Christians that I met. The unbelievers and even the new believers respond so quickly to the teaching and the preaching that my jaw just never left the ground. I mean, I was completely out of my comfort zone that first year for 4 weeks. It was something else. This is the most exciting part. This is after baptism. This is also the most dangerous part. They are so excited about being Christians and having something to live for because they absolutely didn't have anything before. They didn't have any truth. They didn't have anything, any kind of an anchor like this. Now they've got a Bible. Now they've got this in their own language, and they can anchor to this because they understand and believe this is an ancient book, 4,500 years old. Took 2,500 years to write, 40 different authors, and it's consistent from one end to the other, and they latch onto this like a lifesaver in the ocean. They are so happy about being Christians, they want to tell everybody about it. Well, they get on their phones and they tell everybody about it. And they take pictures of each other with wet hair. We try to get them to dry their hair off before they start sending pictures around, because there is only one IP address in all of China. Everything that you do on the phone or on your computer goes through a government warehouse somewhere. There's somebody at a screen watching everything that comes through. Some of it gets caught, some of it doesn't. Most of the time, the government has gotten to the point where they let a lot of that stuff go. But if they start seeing the same faces showing up over and over and over again, red flags start going up. This gentleman was 85 years old. This gentleman was baptized about 14 years ago. That's his father. This is this gentleman's wife, but she's involved in the state church somehow. Right after we baptized this gentleman, we got a phone call that the authorities were coming to visit us at our room. The Chinese scattered. 3 or 4 of them stayed, and the authorities came and took all of our information, told told us, you know, what you're doing is wrong, you know what the rules say, here's the rule book, it's all in Chinese, so we don't know what the rule book says. But we don't want you doing this anymore. So everybody leaves the hotel room. We go to different places, we walk across the street. One of the ladies that had been there says, I have a business across the street and I've got an office there. We can go over there and we'll have some tea. We're in there. Within about 20 minutes, all of the Chinese started drifting back in. And within a half an hour after the authorities had run us out of the hotel, we had another Bible study going in an office on the other side of the square. And Darrell had gone someplace to visit somebody in the hospital with one of the gals. And when he comes back, he's like, they just told us to quit this. I said, I couldn't help it. They all wanted to hear a lesson. So we all got together and I just started teaching. You know, what do I do? He said, okay, let's go. But he said, I hope nobody followed you here or else we're all in trouble. But I've used up all of my time, I think. It's 7:30. I've got some other pictures. Lots of other pictures. This is a hotel where a lot of our trouble started. We got a chance to stay in this hotel where Mao Zedong used to stay. We stayed in this hotel. No Westerners are ever supposed to be in this hotel. The next day we started getting followed, and for the following 2.5 weeks, we got chased through about 14 different towns in China. They never do anything unless you get belligerent or unless you give them a reason to arrest you, because they don't have to have a reason. They can just make something up and arrest you. But we just started playing the tourists. We went to this big ancient Chinese temple that had been rebuilt about 14 different times in the last 2,000 years. And we met these people who heard us speak in English, and they said, oh, you're staying at a hotel here? We want to learn some English. So they came over. I don't think we baptized any one of them, but they were introduced to the gospel just from walking through being tourists. This hotel that we stayed across was right across from that revolutionary, where the revolution started. That's another place that they followed us. They told us to get out of town and not come back. So then we started meeting in restaurants. They eat all the time. So we just started meeting in people's houses. We started meeting in restaurants. We started meeting around these giant tables where the food just keeps coming and they keep putting it in on the center and just spin it around and take what you want. And everybody's got more food than they know what to do with. This is one of the kitchens that we ate out of. And those are some of the ducks that were hanging outside that they put in this meat here. And this is the pots that they cook in. They've got electricity, nuclear power plants, coal-fired power plants, windmills, everything around. Everybody still cooks over charcoal. But this is one of the and they serve. This is a soup kitchen that they serve 300 or 400 people a week out of that don't have enough food. This is a banquet that the state church threw for Darrell and I, and this is probably the fanciest place that we ever were, with silk everywhere, and real porcelain china, and that I don't know if it was full of dignitaries and people. The people that had followed us were out in the parking lot. The guy that was in charge that had invited us there had some pull, and he looked out the window and he saw those, and he told one of his co-workers, he said, just go down there and tell them to leave. They're with me right now. Just go tell them to leave. And so these two black BMWs drove off, and then we saw them when we got back to our hotel. And then there's the food courts in the malls. Some of the malls are 2 or 3 floors underground. The food courts are packed with thousands of people, but these are where you meet everybody. They all want to meet Westerners. They all want to meet people that speak English. And it's a great place to start introducing them to the Bible. And the next thing you know, they're following us back to the hotel room and we're having classes. You can make your own soup. You get to go through the line and pick all of this stuff out, and they boil it down in front of you, and that's what it comes out. So you have to be a little
Adventurous.
easy going with your diet. If you're a picky eater, China's not the place for it. You have to be willing to eat a lot of stuff you have no idea what it is. But it all tasted good to me. The Wangshan Mountains, we met these people. We climbed these mountains all day long. We met these ladies up there, and they were all like, oh, English, English. And so we started talking to them about the Bible. And the two girls on the right, they had come all the way from Hefei. There were a couple of Christians that wanted to learn more, and so they took one of the fast trains about 2.5 hours so that they could walk the mountains with us and learn lessons while we were walking up and down the mountains there. We went to this old village. This village is about 3,500 years old, Tangmo village. I saw this old man, and it was just one of the last memories I had of China that just the old city, 85-year-old Chinese man, bent over, stooped, probably worked hard all of his life, didn't have hardly maybe a nickel to his name. I said, would you stand there for me for a second? I took a picture of him. He pulled out an iPhone 8 out of his back pocket and said, can you send me that picture so that I can send it to my friends? And then he took this picture of us. And that was one of the last pictures of a bunch of us all together in this village. But I mean, things just surprise me. You know, it'd be like Ray pulling an iPhone out of his pocket and doing PowerPoint or something like that. I don't know. You just never know what to expect. But it's a wonderful place, and really, somebody is going to have to teach the next generation. I was ready to be sought by those who did not ask for me. I was ready to be found by those who did not seek me. Here I am, to a nation that was not called by my name. That was Isaiah, as he was talking about the Gentiles and how God would bring the message to the Gentiles. And this is the next generation coming from China. Thank you so much for putting up, and I ran over time with you, but I'm really excited about what's going on in China. I'm not able to go over there. We had at one time decided we were deciding whether to move there or not. There are families that congregations are supporting to move over there and to stay there for a couple of years, and spread the gospel while they're there. The Chinese respond so fast to the gospel. It's incredible how fast it's going. But that's what we have to do. You know, God calls us to go into all of the nations, even where we're not wanted by the government. You know, it's illegal to go there. It's illegal to go to Cuba. But there's Christians that are willing to take that risk to go there and share their faith with others.
We read about that in Matthew, the Great Commission, going all over the world, baptized, teaching about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
And they had no idea when he said that somebody would eventually go to the great state of Louisiana. And here we are today in the swamps and the heat and going, praise the Lord. All right, I'll turn it back over to Mike. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Number 940.